What's up guys, Eric Vasquez here from teachmetodesign.com. In some of my previous videos I've shown you guys different ways that you can remove backgrounds from your images. Whether you want to use the pen tool, the brush tool, or even the magic wand tool, each one has its distinct advantages and disadvantages. Now one of the great things about using the pen tool is the ability to create and save a work path, which allows you to save your file as a JPEG, and it's only one layer and it's typically smaller than a PSD file. Now, if I were to just use the brush tool and, have masks and multiple layers, well, that's going to increase the size of your file significantly. But I'm here to tell you that if you're somebody like myself who prefers using the brush tool, especially if you're working with a tablet, that you can still actually create a work path and save your files as a JPEG in Photoshop. Alright guys, so today I want to talk to you a little bit about masking. Now, a few people have asked me in the past whether I prefer using the pen tool or the brush tool for creating masks. And while I have done some videos on both of these topics before, I just wanted to point out a few of the pros and the cons, or advantages or disadvantages of using each one. As I had done in one of my other videos, which I'll put a link for below, if you use the pen tool, it's nice because you can basically just create a path and then save your file as a JPEG, which means that you don't have to save a huge PSD file. So that is the major advantage of using the pen tool, is just the ability to create a path and save it in the JPEG, so you don't have to save a layered file. It'll save a lot of space on your computer and you just won't be dealing with these large files. The advantage to using a brush is that, a lot of people, especially if you're using a tablet, are just much more comfortable kind of, just painting freely or whatever, as opposed to, clicking and making another point and then, manipulating these handles and anchors. So it's really, a matter of comfort and preference. But if you are somebody who likes to use the brush tool, I wanted to show you guys that you can, in fact, still create paths and save your file as JPEGs, even if you're using a brush tool. So this is a great way for people who are, more inclined to use a tablet or a brush to still be able to get some nice looking paths and still save, on file sizes and things like that. So let me show you guys how I do it. So here I'm just going to open up this portrait of this beautiful woman here, and I'm just going to press Command J to make a copy of that, and then I'm going to turn off the background layer and I'm going to apply a layer mask. So from there, I'm going to grab my brush tool, make sure that the opacity is set to 100% and that I have a solid black color. If you don't, you can just press D on the keyboard and then toggle your colors using the X key to go back and forth between black and white. And really quickly, I just want to pull up my brush settings for a second. So I'm going to press F5 on the keyboard and make sure that my spacing is down. If you have, spacing here in your painting, you'll get this kind of like, well, it's hard to tell there, but if I increase the size of my brush and I start to go, you'll see that you can really tell where each of these like circles are here. So I'm going to leave the spacing to 0, and we can just begin to paint out some of this background. All right, and now I'm just using a tablet, which I love using for work. I personally am one of those people who prefers using a tablet over the pen tool. Especially in Photoshop. I don't think the pen is that great in Photoshop. Hopefully it's something that they'll fix in future versions. But, you can use a combination of the brush and the pen, whatever you want. It's really entirely up to you guys. So the nice thing about the brush tool for me is that I've just gotten so used to it and kind of comfortable using it over time that it's now, my preferred method. So as I start to do this here, I'm noticing that some of the edges are a little bit softer. So instead of using a hard edge brush, I'm actually going to soften a little bit by holding the Shift key and pressing the left bracket once or twice. And you'll notice as I do that, up here in my brush preview, you can actually see the brush getting softer as I hit the left bracket more. Or if I hold down Shift and hit the right bracket, you can actually see the edges of the brush getting harder. So I'm going to leave it somewhere maybe 1 or 2 steps down from the hardest edge brush, just to get a more natural looking result. And I'm going to zoom in and just continue kind of painting the edges here. Now, one of the other things that can be a pain in the ass with the brush is sometimes it's a little awkward to paint at angles like this. So what you can do is actually press R on the keyboard and you can rotate your entire image until you get something like that you're a little more comfortable, painting or brushing at certain angles. So that's a really cool kind of feature, and you can just continue doing it as you work, and it gives you, like a compass that will tell you when your image is once again right side up, and it'll kind of snap into place. So I'm just going to use the brush tool and continue working here. I'm also using the space bar to get the hand and kind of, drag around the image. And just going back and forth, using R to rotate the image, using the space bar to like pull myself around, and then just brushing. So when you get to spaces like this where you have these two kind of angles meeting, I'm just going to cut into it and then press X to toggle and get a solid white, and then brush in that direction. So that way you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't want to cut into this shape too much, or you end up with like a weird, awkward looking corner in there. All right, so you can just cut into it and then brush it back in. Now for something like the hair, because it is, in this case, a pretty straight line, I am going to use the pen tool for this part. I'm just going to create a point here, hold down the Alt Option key, and then drag this handle so that it follows the contour of the outline of the hair. Now again, I'm using the space bar to get the hand tool. I'm going to drag it up here and create another point. And see if I can get away with doing this with only 2 points. I might need 3. Alright, so I'm going to click up here, get my second point going, and now I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and see how my cursor just changed there? I have like a little caret now. What that's going to do is if I hold down the Alt Option key and click on that point, it's going to get rid of that handle. So that handle would have made this line, arc all the way over here, but without it, I have more control over where my next point is going to be placed. All right, so again, if I were to try and now continue to use the pen tool to follow the line of the hair here, look what happens. You get this wonky ass curve because of this handle. So instead, if I hold down the Alt Option key again and click, I can now do it without worrying about having any weird contours or bends in the path. All right, so again, I'm using a combination of the brush tool and the pen tool in order to get this done. All right, and I'm going to show you guys that it doesn't really matter whether you use the pen or the brush. You can still get a nice path and ultimately have a smaller size file, which is great. Especially if you're just kind of prepping images for a composition or a larger design that you're going to be working on. This is a really nice way to just kind of prep your images beforehand and not have to worry about them being too large. All right, so I'm going to get my pen. I'm just going to come back around and close this shape here. And I might as well take this out at the same time. All right, and now that I've closed the shape, I'm just going to press Command Enter on the keyboard to activate the selection. Press X to make sure that black is my foreground color. And now I can just press the Alt Option and Delete key, and that's going to fill that selection with my foreground color, which in this case is black. All right, and now I'm going to rotate the image again, switch back to my brush tool, and just quickly, finish this off here. Just get the arm, smooth that out a little bit. And again, you'll see how I kind of cut into that a little bit. So I'm just going to toggle back to white, paint that in. You can rotate it, move it around. And it doesn't have to be a painful process. I know that silhouetting is kind of one of those things. And, when I say silhouetting, I mean silhouetting or removing the background from an image can be one of the more trite and repetitive tasks for designers that a lot of people really don't enjoy, but some do. It's kind of a mindless task that you just have to get in there and do it. So it's a necessary evil, but you might as well try and make it not necessarily enjoyable, but you can find better ways of doing it. You can find easier ways of doing it and just making things easier for yourself. So that's really what it's all about. It's like if you have to do something, you might as well try to find a way to do it that's not going to be too painful for you. All right, finding ways to work faster and more efficiently all lead to greater productivity. All right, so that way instead of spending, hours just siloing, you can get to the fun stuff and actually putting some of this together. All right, so I'm going to rotate this back right side up, and you see this compass on the screen here? That's going to kind of snap into place when my image is right side up once again. All right, so I'm going to use the right bracket to just make my brush larger, paint this corner back in, or actually remove this corner from the bottom. And I noticed that I actually missed some of this part on the arm here. So again, I'm going to grab my pen, click here, and just kind of clean up the edges a little bit more by using a combination of the brush and the pen. All right, we might as well come all the way back up here, grab the handle holding the Alt Option key, and then just dragging it down and kind of positioning it somewhere around here. Okay, hold down Alt and click on that handle so that I can come directly out here, bring it down, and close the shape. All right, again, press Command and Enter to activate the selection. Make sure you have black set to your foreground color, and press Alt Option Delete on the keyboard. And that's just going to fill that with black. So now we have our cutout, and the thing is, normally if I were to save this, I wouldn't really be able to save these layers as a JPEG file. So I would have to save it as a PSD, which is going to mean it's going to be a little bit larger than a JPEG. So what I can do instead is activate this selection that we've just created for our mask by holding down Command and clicking on the thumbnail. And I'm going to come over to the Paths tab and click on this hamburger menu here and choose Make Work Path. All right, for the tolerance, I'm going to leave it set around 1 and hit OK. Now you'll see we have a path in here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is come back to our Layers panel, and I'm just going to turn the background layer back on, and then press Command E to merge these together. And now I can just hit Command Shift S to save it, and I'm simply going to save over my previous JPEG, the original JPEG file. And for quality here, you can even turn it up a little bit if you want, maybe to around 10. Hit OK, and now I can just close this file. All right, so now if I open this JPEG file back up, you'll see that we still have our path here in the file. All right, so what's nice about that is, again, let's take a look and see how big this file is. 3 megabytes. I mean, as opposed to a Photoshop file, I think that's a bit better. So now if I hold down Command and I click on my work path, I can come over to my Layers tab, press Command J, and that's just going to paste this on a layer of its own, and you have your silo. All right, so that's a way that you guys can combine the brush tool and the pen tool. You don't have to feel limited, like you have to use the pen tool or you have to use one or the other in order to create a path that will result in a smaller file while still also giving you the ability to quickly silhouette your images. So I hope that you guys found this to be helpful, and I hope that it saves you a headache and saves you some time as you do this in your own work for your own projects. I hope you guys found this to be helpful. If so, please give us a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also go ahead and sign up for our email list, guys. We've got some exciting stuff coming up in the new year. And as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.